So thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to visit the Show Me Institute for the first time. Like I mentioned, John Payne and I have been kicking around ideas for doing something like this for a pretty good while. I knew him when he was an undergraduate at WashU, which is where I got my PhD in economics. And we're, like I said, my family and I, we're in St. Louis on a pretty regular basis because we still have a lot of friends here. And I'm glad that we were finally able to ultimately work something out. I do a lot of work that is probably of immediate policy relevance for an organization like the Show Me Institute. In particular, my co-author Charles Cordemanche, who is a fellow WashU economics PhD, he and I have written a series of papers about Walmart and big box retail, and specifically about how Walmart and other big box retailers affect things that a lot of people consider to be sort of non-economic. Now, there is a big literature on the economic effects of Walmart. Prices, wages, jobs, employment, things like that. But one of the things that we try to consider in some detail is the degree to which Walmart affects margins of standards of living that are not purely material, purely jobs and things like that. And so that's what I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes. There are, as I tell my intro econ students, there are three pillars of macroeconomics. There's employment, prices, and income. So jobs, inflation, and total output, basically. And obviously, the big question that people ask when Walmart opens its doors is, how does Walmart affect the local labor market? It's obvious that Walmart increases output, that Walmart allows people to consume more stuff. But people want to know, does Walmart come in and close all the mom and pop outlets and thereby reduce net employment in an area, or does it increase net employment in an area? And I think the consensus on how Walmart affects employment in the areas in which it does business is that Walmart increases job opportunities. There's a net increase in retail jobs. There's a net increase in distributing jobs, perhaps. And there's just a net increase in employment overall when Walmart enters a particular area. Now, there's some questions about the quality of those jobs. A couple of scholars at Penn State have pointed out that yes, in fact, when Walmart enters, we see a slight increase in the poverty rate, but it's not exactly clear precisely what the mechanism is by which that might be happening. And as a bit of a footnote, my co-author on this and I have been thinking about ways to go back and re-examine those data and see if that really holds up. In general, though, it's pretty clear that Walmart leads to net increases in employment in the areas in which it does business. The big effects that Walmart has are primarily on prices and incomes, or excuse me, prices and output. So Walmart increases the variety of stuff that people can consume. People get all sorts of new stuff that they didn't have access to before they had access to Walmart. And Walmart lowers prices. Their old motto, everyday low prices. It's fairly clear from the data that Walmart reduces prices pretty much across the board. So they expand the range of available output. They reduce the prices of all of that output. And I'm pretty sure that suggests that Walmart leads to net increases in overall standards of living. Indeed, when we think about how Walmart affects local economies, well, it's pretty clear that prices go down. It's pretty clear that employment goes up. And it's pretty clear that people have access to wide varieties of different stuff. This has macroeconomic effects as well. This affects the entire national economy. Indeed, a couple of scholars have argued that we're actually overstating the rate of inflation because we don't adequately account for big box retailers like Walmart, Costco, Best Buy, Home Depot, and things like that. So this suggests that measured increases in the price level are actually too high as a result of the fact that we're not adequately accounting for the impact of big box retailers and the impact of this opportunity to shop at big box retail outlets when we're calculating the consumer price index. One of the claims that people have made is, well, Walmart comes in, they wipe out small businesses. So yes, they might increase the number of jobs, but they wipe out all of the small businesses. In a 2008 paper, Russell Sobel and Andrea Dean found that there's really no evidence that that's the case. Using spatial econometric methods, they found that basically there's no effect on net small business employment. Say small businesses having 1 to 5 employees or 6 to 9 employees, or I think it's 1 to 4 and 5 to 9 or something to that effect. There's basically no real effect from Walmart on employment in these categories. Now, it is true that if you're a small business and you compete directly with a big box retailer like a Walmart or a Best Buy or a Costco or a Home Depot, and they open shop next door, then you're going to seriously need to adjust your business practices, and there's a pretty good chance you'll go out of business. So if you're selling hammers and Home Depot comes in next door and they're selling the exact same hammer for $2 less per hammer, I have no idea what a hammer costs. So I assume a $2 reduction in hammer prices is probably is substantial. You'll probably end up closing your doors as a result, and that is part of the real cost of what Joseph Schumpeter called creative destruction. That's the destruction part of it. Some small businesses go away. Other small businesses are going to open up though. Because Walmart reduces prices, Walmart raises employment, Walmart increases variety, and this is probably true of almost any big box retailer. People's dollars are going to go further, and effectively they're going to be richer. So it might very well be the case that the small clothing outlet and the small hardware store and the small electronics store on Main Street, those all get wiped out, but they're going to be replaced perhaps by slightly higher end things. And Sobel and Dean discussed the case of Morgantown, West Virginia, in an article that accompanies their more sophisticated study. And they point out that in Morgantown, yeah, Walmart comes to town, all of the stuff that competes with Walmart, that gets wiped out, but it's replaced by an ice cream parlor, a high-end clothing boutique, a law firm, things like that. So the net effect on small business employment just is, for all intents and purposes, it appears to be zero from looking at the data. Another one of the criticisms of Walmart is that allegedly they squeeze suppliers. So doing business with Walmart is kind of like selling your soul to the devil, because you go in and you go into this poorly ventilated, perhaps, or poorly air-conditioned little hallway where the buyer from Walmart says, okay, we will take this many units of what you have to sell, and we will pay you this price for each unit, and the only answer you have is, well, thank you, sir. Yes, we will gladly provide you with all of this stuff. And there's an argument among some of the critics of Walmart that Walmart has a bit of monopsony power in some markets, so they might be the only buyer of certain types of output. Again, the data on this are slightly unclear. There's a paper that was published in, I think it was the Journal of Retailing, sometime within the last decade or so, that looked at profitability among firms that do business with Walmart. And they might sacrifice some profitability in the short run, but they get bigger market share over the long run. So yeah, Walmart will squeeze you in the short run, but access to Walmart's distribution network, and access to Walmart's supply chain is what they ultimately have to offer. And depending on what you're selling, that can be very, very good for you over the long run. I mentioned that Walmart has macroeconomic effects, and one of the macroeconomic effects of Walmart is that according to a back-of-the-envelope calculation by Richard Vedder and Wendell Cox in their 2007 book, the Big Box Revolution, no, the Walmart Revolution. According to a back-of-the-envelope calculation that they do, the social saving from Walmart is approximately 5% of gross domestic product. Okay. So basically that's a couple of years worth of economic growth that we would not have enjoyed had it not been for Walmart. And when I used to give this talk, I used to say, well, okay, yeah, I can do without a couple of years of economic growth. I wouldn't mind going back to 2008 or something like that. You know, my standard of living was reasonably high then. But now that I have a Mac, I have a Mac laptop, and I have an iPad, and I have an iPhone, and all of this other stuff, I'm kind of glad that we've gotten those extra years of economic growth that have produced all of this great and wonderful stuff that we have, all of the new advances in medical technology and all this other stuff. Now it's true that 5% of GDP, or a couple of years worth of economic growth, again, that's not the make or break for the rise of the Western world or the ultimate decline of civilization. It's kind of nice to have, and obviously we would still be very rich and very well off were it not for, if we didn't have Walmart. But for comparison's purposes, the social saving from Walmart in the 20th century, or late 20th century, is roughly equal to the social saving from the development of railroads in the 19th century. So if you do a thought experiment and you imagine the United States without Walmart, that would basically be the same thing as the United States without railroads in the 19th century. Again, not something that would completely destroy the wonderful civilization that we've developed, but nonetheless, this is a non-trivial impact on standards of living strictly from having access to stores like Walmart, Best Buy, Target, Costco, etc. A McKinsey Global Institute study found that I think it was something like 12.5% of American productivity growth in, I think it was the 1990s, or sometime between the mid-80s and the mid-90s, was attributable solely to Walmart. So whether it's 12.5%, I don't exactly remember. The precise dates I also don't exactly remember off the top of my head. But nonetheless, it's a non-trivial percentage of the productivity growth in the United States attributable solely to the existence of Walmart. So here are a couple of things that my co-author and co-authors and I have done on Walmart. We've sort of gone beyond the standard economic stories, and we've looked at other kinds of quality of life issues. Because, like the Bible says, what profit does it bring you to gain the world and lose your soul? Or William Wordsworth said, in getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. So yes, maybe we're richer and we're better off, and I have my iPad, and I have my iPhone, and I have my Mac, and I have my iAnnotate app that I was just talking about that allows me to mark up PDFs without actually having to use a pen and paper. But perhaps I'm in some way worse off because I spend all of my time fussing around on Facebook, or I spend all of my time fussing around with my iPad and iPhone apps, and less time with my family, and less time with my friends, and less time building real relationships, building what Robert Putnam called social capital. That's one paper we looked at, or we wrote, is Walmart and social capital. Another is Walmart and values. A third is Walmart and leisure activities. So I'm going to talk about those for just a couple of minutes. So first, let's talk about Walmart and social capital. Putnam defines social capital as follows. He said, whereas physical capital refers to physical objects and human capital refers to properties of individuals, social capital refers to connections among individuals, social networks, and the norms of reciprocity that arise from them. So social capital is both an input into production and an output of the production process. It's an input in that who you know, the networks that you have, can help you get jobs, can help you learn newer, better, more interesting things. They can help, when you develop bonds of trust, then you're able to exchange more. You lower transaction costs. And that greases the wheels of commerce, and we get off to the races, and we get the wonderful world that's produced all of these wonderful Apple products and Microsoft products and modern dentistry and all the things that make our lives enjoyable today. It's also an output, because again, there's a lot more to life than just stuff. And no, I don't think anybody would quibble with that. So the production of social capital means the production of relationships with friends, family, so on and so forth. And what we look at is whether Walmart affects social capital in the areas in which they do business. So if Walmart would affect social capital as an input, then we might get these short-run bumps in employment and output and reduced prices from Walmart, but this might not be very good for a community in the long run as these relationships fragment and as all of this stuff sort of goes by the wayside. So we might get increases in overall welfare in the very, very short run, but at the expense of longer run prosperity. And then second, yes, Walmart could very well be, as in the words of a bumper sticker I saw one time, your home for cheap crap. And you spend all of your time indulging cheap crap or going out and buying the latest, newest, shiniest thing, and this comes at the expense of relationships with your friends, your family, your children. To put it very, very bluntly, instead of having cookouts with your neighbors and your family and your friends, you're sitting at home alone, playing Nintendo and eating Doritos or something to that effect, and you are less, you're in a sense less human than you would otherwise be. To use the Marxian terminology, you might be alienated and demoralized by what Walmart hath wrought. We find there's pretty much no effect on social capital measured a number of different ways. And to the degree, again, that you're doing policy-related work, Robert Putnam's entire data set that he used for his 2000 book, Bowling Alone, is available online. That we were able to get 3 papers out of that. So that's a very, very nice data set to have. And we measure social capital, or he measures social capital a number of different ways. We adopt all of those measures, and we look at things like voter turnout, whether you have dinner with your friends, whether you participate in team sports, all of these things that we associate with being kind of a full and complete human being that are apart from mere material consumption. Now we found on the effects of things like number of associations that exist per 10,000 members, voter turnout rate, nonprofits per 10,000 capita, the census participation rate, we get very, very small effects measured when we measure Walmart penetration in a number of different ways. One thing that's interesting, though, is we do find a very, very small reduction in voter turnout as a result of Walmart entry, but it is a very, very small reduction. It's like a 0.7% reduction in voter turnout from, say, increasing the number of Walmarts per 10,000 residents multiplied by the number of years that Walmart has been in existence. So if you just take the raw number of Walmarts per 10,000 residents, in that case you get a 0.2% reduction in voter turnout, which might be, maybe could be enough to swing an election. But it's a very small change. It's statistically significant, but the only thing statistical significance tells us is that it isn't zero. It isn't zero, but it's very close to zero. For most of the measures that we use, and this paper appeared in Public Choice in 2009, if anything, the effect of Walmart on these different measures of social capital might be positive. So there might be lots of good reasons to criticize Walmart, but Walmart is wrecking communities, and Walmart is sort of reducing the degree to which people are engaging in these kinds of activities is probably not going to be one of them. Okay. All right. Another thing that we look at is the relationship between Walmart and values, because you see from a couple of things that happened during the time that we started working on these papers. You saw attacks on Walmart from both the left and the right. So from the left, Walmart was denounced for being a conservative cultural gatekeeper. Used to be you could not get M&M records at Walmart. And then I had to modify this talk when I think it was a few months ago. We were visiting family in Birmingham, Alabama, and we're walking through the CD section at Walmart, and boom, M&M's greatest hits. So they perhaps relaxed that just a little bit. But you can't buy Maxim, to the best of my knowledge, you still can't buy Maxim, For Him, Stuff, or any of these magazines that are considered offensive to family values. It's argued that Walmart is a conservative cultural gatekeeper, foisting their rural Northwest Arkansas values on everybody around the country, and thereby spreading, having an undue influence, we'll say, on people's values. Now, from the right, this is roughly around the same time that Walmart joined the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, which, from cultural conservatives, put Walmart in league with Satan, or something like that. So basically, so Walmart, by joining the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, was foisting its urban, slick, secular values on the country. And of course, everyone has an opinion about Walmart, so there's this big discussion, this big debate about how they're affecting the values of the people in the communities in which they do business. So we went to the data, and we looked at all of these different ways that Walmart might affect how people, might affect people's values. Do you go to church? Do you gamble? How often do you drink? Do you consider yourself old-fashioned? Do you consider yourself conservative? Do you consider yourself liberal? Do you smoke marijuana? There's all sorts of different measures of values out there. All of this, again, is from the Putnam data set, and we found there's basically nothing. From a policy perspective, again, empirical research is often more of an art than a science, and there are differences between what science can tell us and how science is sometimes interpreted. So for example, one set of estimates that we did, we had 1 year of data for how frequently people rented pornographic videos. And so we only had 1 year of data, and we found a very big effect, it was like a 5% reduction in the frequency with which people rented porn when Walmart came to town. Wait a second. Actually, I need to see if I remember. I can't remember if that was a positive or a negative. So a 5% change, we'll say, in the frequency with which people rented porn after we controlled for state effects, when we didn't control for state effects. So it would be easy to sort of write a press release about this and go off to the races and say, well, Walmart affects the degree to which people are renting porn. But by virtue of the fact that we only had 1 year of data and we couldn't control for county-specific characteristics, I'm almost certain that that effect is measuring not the Walmart effect, but it's measuring characteristics related to the places that that Walmart is doing business. So when I present this work, or when I give this talk in different places, that's one of the things I talk about. You have to be very, very careful about how you're interpreting empirical research, because again, like I said, this is something that would be, I'm sure, would turn a lot of heads, but the problem is that that's not a reliable result. What we find generally across the board is Walmart just doesn't matter for values. So if you're going to have a battle about the types of values people should have, or the types of or what is affecting people's values, Walmart doesn't necessarily need to be pulled into the conversation. The next thing we look at is leisure activities. So how does Walmart affect the degree to which people participate in high culture activities, or in team sports, or in things that involve equipment you can get at Walmart? And we find that, yeah, if you can get the equipment at Walmart, you're likely to do more of it when Walmart comes to town. And we think a little bit more interestingly, participation in high culture activities, like going to the theater, or going to the symphony, or all of these things, this tends to increase a little bit by, I think it was 3.1% when Walmart comes to town. So we interpret this as a very indirect income effect, suggesting that Walmart lowers prices, Walmart makes people's dollars go farther, therefore people do more stuff that's associated with slightly higher wealth. Again, is the effect very big? No, not necessarily. But it suggests that if anything, the income effect from Walmart entry is pushing people toward higher culture activities rather than a substitution effect pushing people away from higher culture activities like reading, forgive me, okay, like reading Camus, as opposed to sitting and reading, or sitting on the couch and playing Mario. Now, the most recent paper that we've done, well, actually the most recent paper we've published, it appeared in the Journal of Urban Economics in March, and we look at the relationship between Super Walmart and obesity. So Super Walmart comes to town, and Super Walmart provides incredibly low prices on groceries. Okay, and so Walmart lowers grocery prices. People eat more. Presumably, people gain weight. There are two different channels through which that effect would take place. First, Super Walmart's very low prices themselves. That seems fairly obvious. And then second, the competitive effect of Super Walmart on grocery prices at incumbent retailers. So other places have to lower their prices in order to compete with Super Walmart, and in so doing, people eat more. Perhaps they get a little bit chunkier. We find that you can explain approximately 10% of the increase in obesity in the United States since 1989, strictly in terms of the expansion of Super Walmart. We have what we think is a relatively clean identification strategy for this. We're pretty confident that this is the result. So yes, in fact, about 10% of the increase in obesity since the late 1980s can be attributed primarily to the diffusion of Super Walmart. Now, what we want to think about then is, well, what does that cost us? So we do some back-of-the-envelope calculations, and we estimate that Super Walmart itself, through its direct effect on prices and its indirect effect on competitors' prices, saves the average American household $177 a year, of which only 5.6% of that is offset by higher obesity-related medical expenses. So yeah, Walmart makes us a little bit worse off on one margin, which is, yeah, as a result of the fact that food prices are lower, we're likely to eat more, not because Walmart makes us irresponsible or something, but just because demand curves slope downward, and when prices get low and when prices fall, we do more of stuff. But the net effect is overwhelmingly positive, in that we save a ton of money from Walmart and Super Walmart expansion, and only a very small part of this is offset in the form of the fact that maybe we gain a little bit of weight just because of these technological innovations that Walmart introduces that makes food a little bit cheaper. Given this, we wanted to look and see how exactly it is that all big box retailers, well, not necessarily all big box retailers, but particularly food retailers like Sam's Club and Costco affected the prices of groceries. So a paper that we recently submitted to the Rand Journal of Economics looks at how Costco, Sam's Club, and Super Walmart affect grocery prices. And we focus most of our attention on Costco and Sam's Club. We find, consistent with the literature, that Super Walmart does in fact lower grocery prices, but it appears that Costco, all other things remaining equal, is associated with a slight increase in grocery prices at incumbent retailers. Now, the data set that we use for this allows for very, very clean identification because they don't sample grocery prices at warehouse clubs like Sam's Club and Costco. So they do measure grocery prices a little bit at Super Walmart. They definitely measure grocery prices at Schnucks and Dierbergs. They don't measure grocery prices at Sam's Club and Costco. This, combined with some other data, allows us to get a very, very clean test of the effect of Costco and Sam's Club on grocery prices. Sam's Club doesn't really have much of an effect. And the next paper that we're going to work on, the thing that we're going to do over the summer, is to look at how warehouse clubs affect employment and small business small business formation. Because Sam's Club, we think, caters primarily to small business owners as opposed to families that are going and buying groceries. Costco, on the other hand, sells primarily to the upper middle class family, in the words of someone that I talked to at one of these stores. The net effect of Costco on grocery prices is slightly positive, and what we think is going on is that since Costco comes in and they sell, as I understand it, reasonable quality stuff at incredible discounts, the way that companies like Schnucks and Dierbergs and other incumbent grocery stores are competing with them is by providing higher quality, specifically higher quality of the goods that they're offering. Second, higher quality of the overall shopping experience. And we find that there's a slightly larger positive effect on grocery prices from Costco entry for goods that are not branded. So for example, if you buy lettuce that is not branded, it's going to be the price increase is going to be higher than the price increase from something that is branded like Frosted Flakes cereal. And we interpret that as evidence that firms are competing with Costco by providing slightly higher quality stuff. We're hoping to get referee reports on that paper back soon, and we're hoping that it gets published eventually. So a lot of people are interested in Walmart from a policy perspective, and one thing that I think is, if you're going to develop a list of good reasons and bad reasons to hate Walmart, the straightforward economics, the straightforward social effects are probably not, those are not good reasons to hate Walmart because of the effects. The effects that people are positing on employment, prices, wages, etc., those are just not there. Those are not borne out by the data. A good reason perhaps to hate Walmart might not necessarily be a reason to hate Walmart, but to hate the incentives to which Walmart is responding. Walmart is responding primarily to political incentives in many cases when they're trying to get employer-mandated health insurance, which they can afford to do that. A lot of their competitors, on the other hand, cannot. When they support a higher minimum wage, because they pay $7, $8, $9 an hour. A lot of their competitors do not. When they get all sorts of subsidies for infrastructure and things of that nature, because basically what might happen in that case is that a lot of firms end up being taxed to pay for infrastructure for the company that's eventually going to put them out of business. Okay, so there's no compelling reason why Walmart should be subsidized. There are no positive spillover benefits from having Walmart in an area. So if we're going to have a meaningful discussion about Walmart, then we really want to focus on the areas toward which policy can be improved, and that I think is avoiding subsidies for enormous, incredibly profitable firms. To close, I know that a lot of people are afraid of what Walmart is going to do to the world. So Walmart is going to, they're going to come through, they're eventually going to be the only company left, or something like that. So one of my favorite movies is Idiocracy. And if you've seen Idiocracy, you know when they go to Costco, and Costco's this gigantic, multiple square mile installation where one of the characters says he went to law school there. So Costco has taken over the world. Or if you've ever seen the movie Demolition Man, Taco Bell is the restaurant. Taco Bell is the restaurant that wins the restaurant wars. They're the only restaurant left. So people are afraid that Walmart eventually is going to be the only company left, or the only retailer left, or something like that. I am certain that will never happen. One of my favorite poems is Ozymandias, and there's this great line. It's written on the statue: "Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." And it's this wiped out statue from some long gone age. And I think that eventually we're going to end up looking back at Walmart in much the same way. I borrow a hypothesis in this case from Don Boudreaux, who is at George Mason University and blogs at Cafe Hyatt. He says he predicts that someday when, not if, but when Walmart goes out of business, people are going to look back, the same sort of people who are lamenting the decline of Main Street today, the same class of people are going to look back and lament the shuttering of Walmart. They'll say, oh, I remember Walmart, you could get anything at Walmart. You could go to Walmart, you run into your neighbors at Walmart. Everybody could get stuff at Walmart. You have a backyard cookout because you can buy stuff at Walmart. What has happened to America that even Walmart has gone under? So, I don't fear the demise of Walmart. I think it'll happen eventually. I also don't fear the effects of Walmart because it's pretty clear from the data that if anything, on almost every margin, the effects have been primarily positive. So, I thank you for the opportunity to come and chat today. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. And also, if you have any suggestions, I'm always looking for ways to improve this research agenda. So, thank you much.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Terrific. Question: is it the voter turnout reduction at Walmart? Is that possibly, do you think, related to the subsidies, the TIF, and the resulting eminent domain that often accompanies that? Meaning simply as much that it was statistically significant, but small enough that it could be the nearest Walmart to here. You know, they kicked 100 homes. They destroyed 100 homes in order to build it.
Is that the one in Hanley?
Right.
Oh wow.
So of course, since voter turnout rolls are so often take several years to work through when people move out, could that be explained simply by eminent domain, that there were homes there that voted in that area that are no longer there because some of those Walmarts were eminent domain issues?
That's a really interesting question. And presumably you might be able to get data from that because so if you take the Hanley Walmart, which is there a specific reason why it's not a super Walmart? I've always wondered why the Hanley Road Walmart is not a super Walmart. Is it just?
I do not know. I know that they built it in conjunction with a Sam's right there too, so maybe they didn't want to compete against themselves.
Well, no. A lot of times you'll see when you see a big Walmart development, you'll have a Sam's Club right next to a super Walmart. So for example, the ones that we sometimes shop at, you have a Sam's Club right next to super Walmart. And I think, parenthetically, I think the thing that is ultimately going to kill, that might kill Walmart is Amazon. We actually canceled our Sam's Club membership because we have Amazon Subscribe and Save. We have Subscribe and Save through Amazon Prime, and with 2 kids in diapers, the amount of money that we save from having Subscribe and Save to diapers and pasta and all sorts of other stuff is astronomical. And it's great that it all gets dropped off on our doorstep rather than us having to haul out to...
It's also astounding that that's less expensive than...
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, this is one of the things that I find kind of neat about this is when you look at the history of retail, the development of the big mail-order houses in the late 19th century that with free rural post, that was one thing that was really... that was part of one of the first major innovations in retail, and now in a sense we've kind of gotten back to the same, we're getting back to the same thing, where we have Amazon Subscribe and Save, where they're dropping all this stuff off on our porch.
Sales tax free.
Sales tax free.
Like the others were postage free.
Yes, yes. Okay, so to get back, this gets back to your question, and it raises I think a related question. I'd be very interested in seeing whether you get a small population reduction from a Walmart coming in and being built with eminent domain, and seeing whether the reduction in voter turnout is, here's 10 people who Walmart is where their houses used to be, and they're still on the voter rolls.
It takes years to work through a voter roll.
Right. I think a second question would be, because there's I'm a huge, obviously, I think a huge fan of the spread of free enterprise and free markets and capitalism and whatnot. But there's a degree to which specific capitalist enterprises have often been enriched at the expense of the general public because they get eminent domain, or because they get infrastructure subsidies, or I'd be interested in seeing the degree to which Amazon is on net subsidized through the Postal Service. I don't know necessarily whether what Amazon is shipping gets direct postal subsidies, or if that's the kind of shipping that subsidizes first-class
I think they
mail.
almost exclusively
But-
ship through UPS.
Okay,
Amazon.
okay. I'll have to check that out. Okay, but yeah, I think these are the kinds of things that I think would very much be worth looking into. You know, I get something from Amazon almost like every couple of days. So, and I never ever look to see how it shipped. So I'll check that out the next time something arrives. So every day's like Christmas almost. You click, and then 2 days later, oh look, a book.
I'm interested in actually two things, if you will entertain my thoughts here.
Sure.
Number one, what effect does the Target Corporation have in relation to what you've been discussing about Walmart? Is there a difference?
Okay, so the effect of Target, we include Target as a control variable in sort of like all other stores, because Walmart is bigger than Target by orders of magnitude. Target is big, but I think the last time I checked, if you look at the Forbes 500 and you look at the top 15 retailers, Walmart's annual revenues are greater than the next 15 retailers combined. So I could see Target having similar effects, and I'd be interested in studying this further. With, I think, one of the differences being that Target sort of Target, as it were, traffics in higher-end goods, or at least allegedly traffics in higher-end goods, and that might actually be one of the reasons why they don't attract the same sort of negative attention that Walmart does. Okay, and you had
Yeah, I'm wondering if, this might be a little bit far-fetched, but if we were to, you spoke a little bit about obesity and perhaps overconsumption of foods. I think that, many people will argue that, if you're over-consuming something like Doritos or Cheetos as opposed to mangoes, you're probably going to have a little bit, you're going to be less healthy and probably going to become obese quicker and become larger. Do you think that Walmart could potentially almost combat the obesity and unhealthy issues that come along with that in this country by
absolutely.
not selling maybe things like Doritos and Cheetos and marketing more, try to maybe instill a cultural change?
Yeah. Okay. So the obesity thing is very interesting, because the first version of the paper that circulated, we found trivial reductions in obesity actually from Walmart discount stores and Sam's Clubs, and no effect from super Walmarts. So we sort of passed this around, and then it ended up on the desk of the editor and the referees at the Journal of Urban Econ, and they said, hey, why don't you try this? And so we tried that, and lo and behold, here this big story about super Walmart emerges. We basically rewrote the paper to focus on super Walmart, and now we've got this sort of big question about obesity and what can be done about it. Directions in which we're taking this particular line of the work. First, at some point we want to look at how Walmart affects micronutrient balances, because obviously people don't live on bread alone, so to speak, or obesity is not the only thing that matters. Getting enough vitamin C, enough vitamin A, enough protein, you name it. It'd be interesting to see how Walmart penetration affects these things. Second, another thing we're going to look at is how Walmart and super Walmart affect nutrition outcomes when they enter food deserts. So a food desert there's actually a technical definition of a food desert. I need to look it up. Different countries define it different ways, but where people don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. I would be interested in seeing the degree to which, so for example, where we live in Memphis is right next to a neighborhood called Binghamton, where the street that I drive down is relatively not a high-income area, and there are a couple of little sort of quick stop sorts of places where people get My understanding is that what they have on offer is not fresh fruits and veggies. It's not mangoes. I'd be interested in seeing how nutritional outcomes are affected when Super Walmart enters a food desert. That's the next thing we want to do. And then finally, I know that Walmart is partnered actually with Michelle Obama to try to push healthier eating habits. And so I follow Walmart on Twitter, and they're constantly tweeting about this initiative or that initiative to help get people to eat healthier. I'm not really sure what sort of backroom dealings are going on that might help to explain why they're taking part in this initiative. But I definitely think, given that they're the leader in almost every aspect of retail, they could effect maybe not cultural change necessarily, but they could do a lot, I think, to improve people's eating habits.
Thank you.
Sure.
You mentioned that you didn't find any net effect through your research or research that you referred to from Walmart's impact on morality. Have you, or do you know anybody who's examined its impact on politics or political thinking? Because I know that one of the big pushes, like in New England, they keep Walmart out, keep local food strong. Does it inflame maybe liberal or conservative thought when Walmart tries to push into an area, and is that a persistent effect?
Okay, so when Walmart is there, there's no effect whatsoever on voting, as near as we can tell.
Once it's in the game.
On how people describe their behavior, or on how people describe their politics or anything like that. That's the I think that's the second paper that we did was the values paper. Now one thing that's interesting, and there's on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, I think late last year, or sometime last year, it talked about how there's a firm that specializes in these like sort of anti-Walmart black ops, where suppose that Walmart wanted to enter St. Louis, which obviously they've already done, but Schnucks and Dierbergs might hire this company to come in and start to borrow the popular term, an AstroTurf campaign against Walmart. And that I think is really, really interesting. We've not studied the political response to proposed Walmart entry, but that again I think is something that we want to look into at some point.
Thank you.
Wasn't it Chicago and Evergreen Park?
Yeah, right.
Chicago refused the Walmart, so they put their new thing 1 block outside of Chicago, Evergreen Park.
Yes.
The city of Evergreen Park is making a fortune on sales tax collections from everybody in Chicago shopping there.
Yeah. Now that's something I know people have looked into this a little bit. I don't know that anybody's really done it systematically, but in fact, actually, we're going to be in Massachusetts for part of the summer, so it might be interesting to go to New Hampshire. And as I understand it, like the first Walmart you get to in New Hampshire, usually all of the plates are from Massachusetts. Or to look at Walmarts that have been pushed out, where are the license plates in the parking lot from? Are they predominantly from, in this case, Chicago, or are they predominantly from the next county over, or something like that? I've said, obviously we get a lot of students from Tennessee and surrounding states. We get a lot of students from St. Louis. But when you drive, when you drive from Alabama to Georgia, so you cross out of Alabama into Georgia, first thing you see on either side of the freeway is enormous gas stations selling lottery tickets. Or if you drive from a wet county into a dry county, or excuse me, a dry county into a wet county, usually the first thing you're going to see on either side of the road is a liquor store. And these are sorts of things that make me, in a sense, proud to be an economist because we can explain it. But on the other hand, a little bit depressed because other people sort of don't seem to recognize the effect.
That's exactly.
Yeah.